Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is so awesome that we are having Brigitte Mars back for a second time. And she has a lot of really important information for you today. Brigitte Mars is an author of many books and an herbalist. And today we're going to be talking to her about her wonderful book, Addiction Free Naturally. Very important. And the subtitle is Free Yourself from Opioids, Pharmaceuticals, Alcohol, Tobacco, Caffeine, Sugar, and More. That's a lot. Now, as my audience knows, I'm the author of 10 books, and I wrote my book, The Difference Between Pain and Suffering, a while back because before the pandemic, the leading cause of death in Americans under the age of 50 was actually drug overdose. So now we're going to be talking about natural healing to help you free yourself from addiction. So Brigitte, we need you right in front of us. So Brigitte Mars, you can find out more about Brigitte Mars and her wonderful work at her website, brigittemars.com. Welcome, Brigitte Mars.
Thank you so much, Catherine. A pleasure and an honor to be with you again. And thank you for all your listeners for tuning in.
So Brigitte Mars, first of all, how did you get interested in natural medicine?
Well, I was raised with all the conventional medicines. You know, it's interesting, things that they used to do back in the 50s, like lots of injections, antibiotics, putting mercurochrome on your wounds. That was a mercury solution. So I had this French Canadian grandmother who was a folk healer. And when I would go to Canada, she was always ready with apple cider vinegar and honey, or garlic, or mustard poultice. And I just thought that that was really amazing. It was like something out of a fairy tale. And I saw her do some really amazing things, healing people, healing little wounded animals. And I just said, this is something I want to do. This is medicine for the people, and it tastes good, and it's in our kitchens already. And this is what our ancestors did. So I always like to say natural medicine, most of it is something that's been used by millions of people for thousands of years. And I like that. I resonate with that. Not that modern medicine isn't great, but there's this lineage of folk medicine that is so well worth exploring.
Yes, and Brigitte Mars, if I may say so, I'm 64. You and I are the wise women. And nowadays we can share through social media and the internet and YouTube and UK Health Radio, all this wisdom to pass along to people who really, really need it. Now, in my view, as a medical intuitive healer, addiction is almost part of the human condition. If you think about all the things that people get addicted to, legal and illegal. So legal would be like online shopping or cookies. Who doesn't like cookies or chocolate or sugar? And then you have, or coffee, right? And then you have, the illegal substances, cocaine, heroin, and the legal substances, prescription medications like opioids that can really send people down the rabbit hole and are very, very destructive to the mind, body, and spirit. So Brigitte Mars, how did you come to start tackling the subject of addiction?
Well, I see that so many people do all kinds of good things for their health. They eat right, they go to the gym, they hike, they do yoga, but very often they're undermining their health because of the sugar addiction, the cocaine addiction, the caffeine addiction. So I felt that this is a really big piece of natural healing. And so you could be spending hundreds of dollars on herbs and supplements every month. But if you're doing something that's undermining your health, drinking too much, then that is going to get in the way of really achieving ultimate health. And as you were saying, it's not always an illegal substance. It's not even something that you ingest. It could be, being on the internet or shopping or gambling or promiscuity. All of these things can become behavioral problems that people indulge in. And it does seem to be something that is very much pervading our culture.
Now, why do you feel, in your professional opinion, why do you feel people get addiction? Why do you feel addiction actually occurs in the first place?
Well, I do have a few reasons. I mean, we certainly know there's a genetic component, which means you have to work harder at staying free from that. That the excuse like, well, my parents were alcoholics or my grandfather, abused this substance, then we just have to work harder with good nutrition and with steering clear. I also think that sugar addiction plays a part of it because many addictive substances have their roots in elevating our blood sugar. So having a cup of coffee before you go to work in the morning, tobacco is cured with sugar. Even the effects of alcohol, it's made with sugar. Cannabis, it elevates your blood sugar temporarily. And then when it crashes, that's when the munchies come on. So stabilizing our blood sugar is really an important factor. There's also the factor of being a poor oxygen metabolizer. But Catherine, we have all these little ditties going through our head from the media about you deserve a break today, and I haven't got time for the pain. And so I do think we need to find other ways to reward ourselves for being a good parent, for being a hard worker, for, cleaning the house. And rather than choosing substances that undermine our health, we need to find healthier ways that we can reward ourselves. It's also possible that some people are medicating themselves because they're going through a really hard time. And rather than being judgmental, like that's bad that you drink, that might be what they're doing so that they can cope with past traumas, with perhaps even nutritional deficiencies, with being in difficult relationships. So it's a big picture. And in the book, I do give all kinds of ideas on how we can get to the source of it. But the sugar component is really big. And we also see that some people go from one addiction to the next. They say, I'm going to quit drinking, but then they start overeating cookies. If you've ever been to an AA meeting, I didn't even know we had that much sugar in all of our county. Oh my God, the donuts and the cakes and the cookies and the unlimited coffee, all of that is going to be keeping us in an addictive loop.
Great insights. And I agree. I used to joke that the key to life is to balance your blood sugar. Now, why is that so important? So every time your blood sugar drops, your serotonin level goes down, which is the neurotransmitter, one of the many neurotransmitters that helps you feel happy, right? And every time your blood sugar goes down, your cortisol, which is a stress hormone, spikes. So when your blood sugar drops, you're going to feel anxious, you're going to feel a little bit shaky, you're going to feel stressed. And when your blood sugar is moving like a roller coaster all day long, that's going to affect your sleep because you're going to wake up in the middle of the night feeling anxious and hungry or wanting to self-medicate. And it's going to affect your energy level and your mood all day long. So as we stabilize our blood sugar, then you're calmer, you're less anxious, you're happier, and you have stronger willpower. Because when your blood sugar drops, your willpower can go out the window. Now, Brigitte Mars, author of Addiction Free Naturally, do you have specific dietary suggestions that can help people overcome addictions?
Oh, that is a great question. Thank you. So I do think it's important to look at the possibility that some of us might even be craving a substance that we're allergic to. Maybe we crave alcohol because there's yeast in it, or sugar in it, or wheat. So getting off of allergens, and I'm so glad that you're on board with the idea that food, blood sugar levels are going to have a big part of it. So it's not just sugar, it's refined carbohydrates. It's the white rice and the white bread. So I'm always big on eat all the colors of the rainbow. It's also found that when we're in a more alkaline state, we're going to have less cravings. So if we could consume more fresh fruits and vegetables, that's always a good place to start. It can be really important to use foods that help our livers to naturally detoxify, things like drinking lemon and water, eating more green leafy vegetables. And also, according to Asian medicine, when we're trying to strengthen our willpower, the use of mineral dense black colored foods can be very helpful. Like I love chia seeds or wild rice or black beans or black olives. So all those minerals can really help us. And of course, we can make our food delicious and beautiful and healthful. It's possible that some people who struggle with addiction have a greater need for some certain nutrients. Maybe they need more B complex, so they could get that from nuts. And maybe they need more protein. Maybe they need better quality fats. To look at all that. So it's often like we're looking for love in all the wrong places. We're, looking for something that's going to give us some comfort and help balance our hormones and our neurotransmitters. And rather than thinking we're just a wisp in the wind, every meal we have an opportunity for choosing things that are going to help us to feel strong and grounded. And of course, it helps if you know how to have healthy food in your home and you hang out with people that are also going to be supportive. It's really hard to be the only one in your circle that doesn't indulge in something. So sometimes we even have to look at our friends, and having a buddy that wants to get on board with letting go of something can be really helpful. But basically, getting more alkaline, taking care of our liver, our kidneys and adrenals, and avoiding the allergens would be how I would sum it up as far as diet goes.
Great suggestions. I would add to that with your great suggestions, Brigitte Mars. There's an eating plan that I would use if I'm working with somebody to try and overcome addictions. And I'm going to give you the main points of it. The first thing is that I would make sure they're eating protein every time they open their mouth. Now, some people in natural healing are diehard vegetarians, and we won't go into the pros and cons of that. However, what I will say is it's important to understand that all your neurotransmitters, your brain chemistry, is made from amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein. And more than likely, if you are battling addictions, your brain chemistry ain't okay. Your brain chemistry is not all right if you are suffering from addictions. So part of what you have to do is you actually have to take care of the raw materials that make your brain chemistry. And those actually come from protein. So am I telling you to go out and eat a 16-ounce steak? No, I'm not. Because if you eat too much meat at one time, your body can't process that. But if I've got a client with addictions, I'm going to make sure they're eating protein every time they open their mouth to give their brain chemistry the raw materials to make those neurotransmitters. I'm also, believe it or not, going to encourage them to eat red meat. Why is that important? Red meat is the only substance that contains methionine in high levels, and methionine helps you keep your blood sugar balanced at really deep levels. So I'm going to have you eat meat. I'm going to have you eat vegetables. I'm going to have you eat fruit. And like Brigitte Mars says and recommends, I'm going to have you eliminate those highly processed refined carbohydrates out of your diet. Okay. I'm going to have you eat healthy fats like nuts, avocados, butter, and so on. And very importantly, I'm going to have you drink enough water, because all your neurotransmitters work in water. So you want to drink half your body weight in ounces of water every day. And water is going to assist your detoxification process, right? You can't detoxify if you are dehydrated. So meat, vegetables, fruit, nuts, very little junk. And we'll have a long discussion about what junk is. And I joke with clients, if you need to email me and ask, is this Twinkie good for me? Think again. And although I did have a client who used to work for the Twinkie company, and they said Twinkies are not as bad as you think. But anyway, that's another discussion. But the other piece, and this is super important if you're trying to overcome addictions, is you've got to eat small amounts frequently. And by small amounts frequently, I mean like little small amounts of food every 2 hours. Now, why is that important? Why is it even critical? Because as we mentioned, every time your blood sugar drops, those stress hormones are going to spike, your brain chemistry is going to plummet. So by eating small amounts frequently, you're going to keep your blood sugar balanced, and you're going to keep your brain chemistry balanced so that you're more balanced all day long. And many people who have a history of alcoholism, maybe the only substance they ingest all day long is alcohol. Like they don't eat, they just drink alcohol. So you want to break that cycle and feed yourself with healthy foods. Now, with that, let's take a break and listen to a message from one of our commercial sponsors. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. We're listening to Brigitte Mars and about her book, Addiction Free Naturally. Brigitte Mars, you are an herbalist. Are there any specific herbs that you recommend that liberate people from various addictions?
Absolutely, Catherine. And people who have gotten on the path of abusing substances are often very receptive to trying herbal medicine. Maybe they've, done the pharmaceutical route and let's try something else. So it really depends on the addiction. But let's say caffeine is often the first addiction of the morning. So again, and we want to be careful to say that these substances aren't necessarily all bad. I mean, there are health benefits. We certainly know that tobacco is sometimes used in shamanic practices, that alcohol has antimicrobial properties and antioxidants. But let's say we want to do less alcohol. Well, actually, I was going to talk about caffeine first. So caffeine, very often we like having some warm, flavorful, roasty tasting beverage. And if you get off coffee cold turkey, you might get a headache. So the possibility of making it part coffee and part something like roasted dandelion root, which has a nice earthy flavor. There's a lot of products on the market that are coffee substitutes like Ticino or Rasa, chaga mushrooms. And if you start using less coffee and more chaga or more roasted dandelion root, it gives you the opportunity to get used to that transition. Let's say it's a tobacco addiction. Well, we certainly have in our consciousness that the Native Americans smoked tobacco, but yet they smoked some 50 different plants. So why did we only remember one of them? So again, if you quit tobacco cold turkey, you might find it a little easier to roll your own and put some other herbs in what you're rolling, like mullein leaves. There's actually an herb called lobelia inflata, which contains an alkaloid called lobeline, which mimics the effects of nicotine. And there's some products in the marketplace that contain lobeline or lobelia in there that can help you gradually withdraw from the tobacco. So Another addiction, let's say cocaine, people like things that are stimulating. Well, in this case, you might want to use something that does have some caffeine in it, like guarana or yerba mate. And in my book, I was really glad to include kratom, which is a very controversial herb, but it is helping to liberate people from pain medicines, from opiates. Of course, we don't want to just band-aid it, just take an herb. I think it's important to do journaling and improve your diet and look at your lifestyle. But for whatever the addiction is, there's probably an herb that's going to fill some of those receptor sites to help you gradually decrease it. And I will say that the more we refine a substance, the more addicting it becomes. So sugar, for an example, sugar either comes from sugar cane or sugar beets. Sugar cane is a member of the Poaceae family. It's a relative of wheat, rye, oats, and barley, but we've turned it into a white crystalline powder, much like heroin or cocaine. So all the good stuff that was in sugar, the B vitamins, the iron, that got removed. And so now we have this white crystalline powder that's very addictive. So there are herbs like cinnamon can help us to sweeten our applesauce or yogurt or whatever we might be wanting to sweeten. Cinnamon also helps to stabilize blood sugar levels. There's an herb called Gymnema sylvestre, which actually blocks the flavor of sugar. So another addiction that we might want to look at, let's say people are just wanting to have more fun or use something that's maybe that they can socialize with. They might even try something like kava kava, which is used as a ritual in many parts of the world. I do think there's a component of like, I want to do something with my friends that's a little bit fun or a little out of the ordinary. So I think that we can have a green tea ceremony. So there are a lot of herbs, and it really depends on the addiction and what we might want to use to help liberate us. And I sometimes say, God bless the people that can just like, I'm quitting today. But for a lot of us, setting a date in a month in the future, for example, gives people to gradually decrease it, get rid of the paraphernalia associated with it, and really, be ready for something different, especially in the new year.
So great information, Brigitte Mars. Now, so we've talked about herbs for caffeine, tobacco, cocaine, and sugar. What about people who are trying to get off opioids? That's really difficult. Getting off the hydrocodone and the gabapentin and the opioid drugs that people are using for pain medication. I wrote a whole book about it myself, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, fortunately, nature blesses us with remedies for pain, and opium is a great example. Opium is from the poppy, but we've refined it into a crystalline white substance. Do you know that the Bayer Corporation actually wanted to invent something to help with what they call the soldier's disease, which was morphine addiction? Because after the Civil War, so many people, not only soldiers, but housewives and children were addicted to morphine. And so they came up with something called Heroish, which later became called heroin, but it proved to be more addicting. So of course, most of us are not going to have a big ball of opium in our first aid kits, but that is a good pain relieving agent. But we do have herbs like corydalis, which is an herb that's used in Asia, but does grow in North America. Corydalis is wonderful for pain. We could look at maybe some gentler herbs, white willow bark, pedicides, also known as butterbur. But of course, we don't want to just cover up the pain. Maybe we need to start doing yoga or go to a chiropractor or stop doing the repetitive exercises that are causing us pain. That's always really important. We don't want to just band-aid it with opioids or even just with an herb, but get to the source of the pain. It's possible that the diet we're eating, sugar, refined carbohydrates, eating the things we're allergic to, is causing inflammation in our bodies. So if we can improve our diet, that might also reduce the inflammation. And of course, there's going to be foods like strawberries and cucumbers and green leafy vegetables, good quality deep sea fish from cold water that's going to have anti-inflammatory oils in it. But yes, there are things we can use for pain, and we don't want to do the most addicting things. We can find things and then gradually, as we improve our health, even use less of the herbs as we improve our alignment.
Brigitte Mars, I'm so glad that you talked about anti-inflammatory diet, because if I've got somebody in pain, one of the things that I point out to them is that all pain comes from inflammation, right? And the best way to think about inflammation is that it's like fire in the body. So I could throw a match on the floor of my house and burn down my entire house. 70% of inflammation begins in your gut. So that is why when you're in pain, what you put in your mouth is so critical. So like you, I recommend an anti-inflammatory diet. What is that? What's an anti-inflammatory diet? Well, first you have to look at what are the pro-inflammatory substances. What foods cause inflammation? And it's simple to remember: cats, caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, and sugar. And then what I call friends of cats, which is fried foods and gluten. So I came up with a sentence a long time ago: nobody in their right mind eats cats. You can remember that. Nobody in their right mind eats cats. So when you're in pain, you want to reduce the caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, sugar, reduce the fried foods and the gluten. And then you want to increase the anti-inflammatory foods. What is that? Fruits and vegetables, clean water, right? Omega-3 fish oils, right? And the more that you alkalize your body and increase the anti-inflammatory foods and decrease the pro-inflammatory foods, you can start to feel better. Now, what about alcohol? What herbs do you recommend when people are trying to stop drinking alcohol?
So I do certainly support the values of AA and finding a buddy and role playing and, avoiding something called HALT, being hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. I think these are all wonderful principles, but I don't see that there's enough nutritional and herbal support given. So, of course, we don't want to give herbal tinctures to someone who's dealing with alcoholism. Most herbal tinctures are in an alcohol base. So even though if I say, well, the herb angelica has a tradition of being used to help decrease a desire for alcohol. So you would want to do that either in a tea or a capsule. Cinnamon would be another good one. There's an herb called, I wanted to say juniper berry. Juniper berry is another one, and gin is made out of juniper, so that's kind of an interesting one. Even just smelling juniper berry essential oil. Now, some people maybe like the effects of beer, but they could also use hops, which beer contains, and hops not only is antimicrobial, but also very relaxing. There's also a tradition of putting a whole clove in your mouth, not a clove of garlic, but the little cloves that we use in making spice cider. Just putting that in your mouth is also a traditional remedy for decreasing the desire to consume alcohol. And another herb that is good for a plethora of addictions is milky oat seed. We all know about the grain oats and oatmeal, a grain that's high in fat and nourishing in complex carbohydrates, but the whole plant, the milky portion of the grass and the seeds are really high in trace minerals like calcium, magnesium, silica. They have a calming effect on our nervous system. Not only can you drink it as a tea to help you stay calm, but you could also put a bunch of it in a lost sock, tie it up, and take a bath in it for a very relaxing effect. So those are a few of the herbs that I would use, and we could even get into, vitamins like L-glutamine to stabilize your blood sugar. But again, I encourage people to look at what it is that they're drinking. So when I go out with my friends at a club or a concert, I might drink cranberry juice with some sparkly water in it. It's good for my kidneys, good for my bladder. I'm hanging out with my friends. The music is great. And I'm going to feel great the next morning too.
Yes, absolutely. Great information. Now, Brigitte Mars, I had a new client recently, and 5,000 points to him. He had freed himself from alcohol addiction, which was great. So, and in his case, he used plant medicine. So he was off alcohol, huge personal accomplishment. And he decided that he tuned in himself on his own, and he decided there was something wrong with his liver. And many people who suffer from addictions have, in fact, damaged their liver and their kidneys and their heart and many other organs in their body. But at any rate, he put himself on milk thistle. So he correctly recognized the problem. B, he turned to an herb, but C, he actually made himself way worse. And he came to me as a client, and I said, your milk thistle is actually shutting down your liver. So many people, as you know, who try to detoxify are turning to milk thistle. What is the problem with using milk thistle alone for detoxification after addiction?
Well, milk thistle seed is Saliba marianum. What it does is it helps to regenerate the liver. The liver fortunately does forgive us and our transgressions, but if he's trying to detoxify and rebuild at the same time, maybe the detoxification coming first would probably be a better thing. I do like milk thistle. And I even have it in a little pepper grinder and sprinkle it on my broccoli and things like that. But trying to rebuild, and I do know a lot of people who take milk thistle to prevent the substance that they're abusing from doing damage, but it's more rebuilding than cleansing. So that might not be the most appropriate thing. And I'm glad that he's working with you.
Yes. Well, one of the things that I pointed out to him is that about 40% of the population has impaired phase 2 detoxification of the liver. So your liver has two phases of detoxification, phase 1 and phase 2. And when you just realize that genetically, even if you don't do any testing, you have a 40% chance of impaired phase 2 detoxification. If you can mess yourself up if you don't detoxify in a balanced way. Now, Brigitte Mars, you and I both use natural substances and recommend natural healing remedies. What about vitamin supplements? What vitamin supplements do you recommend for people who are working to detoxify and overcome addictions?
Well, because so often there's a stress component about why people are abusing things, I think of things like a B vitamin complex might be helpful. A really good calcium magnesium supplement might help you to sleep better. There's a little poem in the natural foods industry. It doesn't rhyme, but it's easy to remember. If you have spasms, think magnesium. And very often when people are going through a detox, they do have spasms. That's why we say, they're kicking the habit because they might like jolt a little bit. And so calcium and magnesium might be helpful for that. Again, fish oils or omega-3 fatty acids, there are vegan sources of it, but some people say, look, I really need some help. We used to have a little saying in Boulder, cocaine is nature's way of telling you you're making too much money. And so I would always tell people, you're spending all this money on something that's undermining your health. Go pay a visit to the health food store, get right with some, supplements that are really helpful. L-glutamine is another one that can help stabilize blood sugar, which is really at the core. And Cinnamon might be helpful for some people. So because there's so many different kinds of addictions, we really want to look at the underlying things. Do you need help with anxiety? Do you need help with sleep? Do you need help with pain? And choose accordingly. But one last supplement I like a lot is GTF chromium. The GTF stands for glucose tolerance factor chromium, and it's a trace mineral. It does occur in nutritional yeast and black pepper, but how much of those things can you eat? And I find that a small dosage, like 200 micrograms of GTF chromium between meals, can help keep the blood sugar level stable. So you really don't miss the sugar. This is sort of an herb supplement, but spirulina, which is a one-cell microalgae, is so high in amino acids that it really helps to satisfy the brain's hunger for substance. And not only can you take it as a supplement, but you can blend spirulina into smoothies, into salad dressing. I like to add it to guacamole. It has a beautiful turquoise color. So nature really does provide so many remedies that nourish us. It can help us have the fortitude to let go of that which no longer serves.
Great information. And I would like to add a couple of natural healing remedies that include a few things. So when we have pain, and again, so many of us who turn to opioids, the core issue is pain, right? So, and you've got to get your inflammation down. So we talked about an anti-inflammatory diet, but a natural healing remedy is turmeric, black pepper, and honey. So the simple recipe is you get a teaspoon of turmeric, and you can get organic turmeric anywhere, even at the grocery store, an eighth a teaspoon of black pepper. And the black pepper is helpful because it activates the turmeric, and then honey. And I like to use Manuka honey, which is antiviral and antibacterial. And here we're talking about, overcoming sugar addictions, but you want to use honey therapeutically. So you combine turmeric, black pepper, and honey. You can make a tea out of it. And that's a natural pain relief, and it's going to bring your inflammation down. The other thing is, if I have a client who's a sugar addict, and that includes a lot of us women, maybe half of the women listening to this broadcast are secretly like really, hooked on our sugar. A simple thing to do is to combine chlorophyll, fenugreek, and flaxseed. So I'll tell you how to do that. All right, so first thing in the morning, you would get liquid chlorophyll. So liquid chlorophyll is green. It comes in a glass bottle. You would have about a tablespoon of that. And then you would put in a tablespoon of fenugreek seed. The fenugreek seed helps to balance your blood sugar. And then you'd also include a tablespoon of flaxseed. Now, let me talk about flaxseed. So you could, if you have a sensitive GI system, I would use ground flaxseed. If you have a healthy GI system, which many people with addictions do not, because they've destroyed their the GI lining, you could use whole flaxseed. But you combine basically a tablespoon of liquid chlorophyll, a tablespoon of fenugreek seed, and a tablespoon of flaxseed in 8 ounces of water, and you down it first thing in the morning, and it is the best thing in the world for overcoming sugar addiction. I've had clients who were on prescription appetite suppressants from their weight loss center, and the fenugreek, flaxseed, and chlorophyll actually work better, and it's going to help just stabilize those cravings. Now, with that, let's take another break and listen to a message from one of our commercial sponsors here at UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, and we're interviewing Brigitte Mars about her wonderful book, Addiction Free Naturally. So, Brigitte Mars, I really appreciate you being so generous with your specific recommendations to help everyone all over the world because addiction is a global issue. Now, I do medical intuitive readings for a healing center in Costa Rica that uses plant medicine to empower people to get off every substance known to man. And the people that I work with, they say that the hardest addictions to overcome are actually to prescription antidepressants. So when people, and I think something like over 12% of US adults are on antidepressants, okay? And again, no judgment, but people go on for 20, 30 years living on antidepressants, and that becomes part of them rather than really dealing with the issues and changing their whole being. When you have clients who are on prescription antidepressants, what herbs do you recommend for them?
Well, because there are so many people who are on them, rather than making them feel guilty or being judged, I say,
Yeah.
okay, here you are, you're on these meds. This is a really good time to get right with the therapist, to clean your house, do your feng shui, learn about healthier eating, find out what are some of the things you can use at the health food store. And in Asian medicine, depression is often seen as a liver symptom. And I don't think people realize that we gunk up our livers with fried food, with hydrogenated oils, with eating things we're allergic to, and so forth. So, a simple thing I would say is drink lemon and water, eat more green leafy vegetables, and herbs that could help brighten our mood are going to be things like, well, we certainly want to mention St. John's wort. However, if you're already on selective serotonin reuptake inhibiting drugs, SSRI drugs, and you take St. John's wort, it could be too much. So it would be something you would use as you get off of your antidepressants. Lemon balm is a wonderful herb. It was said in the ancient world, lemon balm maketh the sad heart merry. There's
Mm.
also lavender. Lavender tends to smell better than it tastes, but it is available in capsule or tincture. There's also the possibility of using fish oils, and there's a product called Emotional Balance that's available at health food stores. Cacao is another one, green tea. But I also really try to ask people to find other ways that they can reward themselves. And one of the factors I said that in Asian medicine, the liver corresponds to the emotions of anger and depression and creativity. So having a creative outlet, whether it be playing an instrument, sketching, drawing, knitting, crocheting, sewing, making something beautiful, it improves your self-esteem. And I think we have a generation of people that what they're only doing with their hands are on the computer and changing the TV station. So I want to encourage people that suffer from depression, go visit a craft store and find something that you might enjoy doing to create something of beauty. It doesn't have to be something that gets exhibited or sold, just something that's an expression of you to get some of those emotions out of you. And because Catherine, I so appreciate that you talked about the importance of diet and even of animal food. We know that in years gone by, hunters would often kill an animal and eat the part of the animal that maybe was going to give them courage or strength. And if people are eating factory farmed animals, that the animals live in a real hellish lifestyle, could we be getting depression and anxiety from them? So this is also an opportunity to support the farmers that are doing a better job, wild caught fish, pasture raised, eggs, grass fed beef. If you do eat those animal products, you don't want to eat animals that are depressed and anxious, because that could be becoming part of our reality. But colorful fresh fruits and vegetables, and know that there are herbs that can brighten your mood. Again, lemon balm, cacao, green tea, certainly St. John's wort, Dandelion root is another good one. Dandelion root is said to be good for getting rid of old stored emotions in the body. So we are blessed. You just have to take the time to learn about these plants and make them your allies.
Great information, Brigitte Mars. And 2 of my 10 books are all about how to overcome depression naturally. The most recent being Banish the Blues Now. To everything that you just said, I would also add, when I'm working with somebody who wants to, with permission from their medical doctor, to get off their antidepressants, I'm going to look at amino acids. Because again, all your brain chemistry, all your neurotransmitters are made from amino acids. And nowadays in natural healing, there's all kinds of wonderful supplements that are specifically designed including amino acids to balance brain chemistry. Now, Brigitte Mars, as the author of Addiction Free Naturally, what do you think is the hardest addiction to overcome?
Well, I do think that prescription drugs are really difficult. There's also the possibility that people might be addicted to multiple substances. Maybe they're, and so that can be more complicated. And if they are already suffering from some sort of health condition, diabetes, heart medicine, liver dysfunction, then you have to be more careful. And they might even need a counsel of a health professional, because their lives are so entangled with all kinds of drugs and all kinds of imbalances. But I do love that you're working with plant medicine in Costa Rica, because I think sometimes what people really need is a spiritual aha, a spiritual awakening to realize that they are part of the divine plan. Like, aha, why am I piddling around with this stuff that's damaging my psyche just so I can cope, when really I do get to make a choice in how I live my life. And sometimes it is that big spiritual epiphany that wakes people up to say, I don't want to do that anymore. So I do encourage people to make a list of all the other ways they can reward themselves, to maybe look at the friendships that they're entangled in. Is this person really my friend, or are they just somebody who doesn't judge me because I'm abusing some substance and they're my little pal and we have our little secret? So there are so many steps we can take, and it's really a beautiful path because it comes down to loving yourself. It's good for your own health. It's good for the planet. It's good for your family, because you think your addiction's only affecting you, but it's probably affecting those that love you and that are in your circle as well.
Fantastic information, Brigitte Mars. And I would add, if you're listening to this broadcast and you're suffering from any of the addictions that we are talking about today, that a really good strategy is to take a step down approach. So what do I mean by that? So the first step would be to get off illegal substances and move to something legal. So if you're doing cocaine or heroin, which is illegal, then move to something like caffeine, sugar, and cigarettes. And neither Brigitte nor I would say caffeine, sugar, and cigarettes are good for you, but they're not illegal and they're not going to kill you possibly instantly, like some of the drugs might be. So for example, fentanyl, I think just a few, if you look at the amount of fentanyl that will kill somebody, it's the equivalent of just a few grains of salt. So again, if you realize that you're suffering from addictions, try and talk yourself into moving from illegal substances to legal substances, and then work with all the resources that you can, the herbal kingdom, supportive people, therapists, healers, to gradually unwind that addictive process. And I agree with Brigitte Mars that at the end of the day, low self-esteem, lack of self-love are core to addictions. And Brigitte Mars, any final thoughts for our audience? about
So I do think it's good to have a journal, maybe make a list of all the reasons you'd like to give something up. Maybe you even want to look at what is this costing me? You know, even if it's just a legal mocha latte every day, what is that costing you at the end of the month? And what else could you do with that money? But even looking at it's making my tobacco habits, making me not nice to kiss, it's damaging to my lungs, nobody wants to be around it. What companies are we supporting? We're supporting companies that really don't care about the health of the people and the health of the planet. So you have to get on board with psyching yourself up about why you want to give it up, and just realize that there are so many alternatives. We live in a time, most towns have natural food stores. They have helpful people that you can go talk to about what a good brand of supplement or herbs might be that you could use. So we really are blessed because there are choices, the information is out there, there's support groups. And I just wish you well on your journey of, getting free so that we can be of service while we're here on this earth. And Catherine, thank you for the wonderful work you do, helping people find their way out of sticky stuff and celebrating a more beautiful life.
You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Our guest today has been the one and only Brigitte Mars, and who's an herbalist and the author of Addiction Free Naturally. You can find out more about Brigitte Mars and her wonderful work at her website, BrigitteMars.com. Thank you so much for listening, and realize that natural healing can empower you to free yourself from the addictive process.